Stop everything. Because what you're about to hear isn't just drama, it's a full-scale celebrity detonation that has spiraled completely out of control. The internet didn't just wake up to chaos, it woke up to war. And at the center of it all, Cardi B, Stefon Diggs, and now, dragged straight into the fire, Young Miami. This isn't a rumor. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a chain reaction of leaks, whispers, and explosive moments that have turned a private situation into a public meltdown so intense, insiders are calling it uncontainable. Because late last night, something surfaced. Not just a tweet. Not just a vague post. We are talking about alleged messages that were never supposed to leave private screens, hinting at late-night link-ups, hidden conversations, and a connection that no one saw coming. Or maybe no one wanted to see. And the moment those whispers hit the timeline, everything changed. Because suddenly, fans weren't just speculating, they were connecting dots. Old videos resurfaced. Event footage got reanalyzed. Timelines started overlapping in ways that felt way too precise to ignore. And Cardi? She didn't stay quiet. No cryptic silence. No calculated PR move. She reacted. Fast. Loud. And emotionally. Sources are saying her response wasn't just anger, it was eruption. The kind of reaction that only happens when something hits deeper than the public understands. The kind of reaction that suggests this wasn't just internet noise, it was personal. Because here's where it gets even more explosive. There are now claims, unverified but spreading like wildfire, that Cardi had already been watching things unfold behind the scenes. That she noticed patterns. That she saw shifts. That she felt something was off long before the internet caught on. And if that's true, then this moment right now isn't the beginning. It's the breaking point. Because what's coming next isn't just about what leaked. It's about what those leaks might confirm. And if even a fraction of this is real, then this isn't just drama. This is betrayal, exposed in real time. It didn't explode online first. It started in whispers. Quiet, almost invisible shifts that no one outside the inner circle could have caught, except someone did. And once those whispers slipped out, they didn't stay whispers for long. They turned into murmurs. Then conversations. Then full-blown accusations that would eventually drag Cardi B, Stefon Diggs, and Young Miami into a storm that no one could control. Because according to multiple so-called insiders, people who claim they've been watching this situation unfold quietly for months, this wasn't random. This wasn't sudden. This was building. And the first sign wasn't a message. Wasn't a leak. It was distance. Subtle at first. Barely noticeable. The kind of shift you could easily dismiss if you weren't looking closely. But those who were paying attention say the energy between Cardi and Diggs had already started changing weeks before anything hit the internet. Less visible interaction. Fewer public alignments. Moments where their schedules coincidentally stopped overlapping. At first, fans brushed it off. That's what happens when two high-profile people live chaotic lives. But insiders say it wasn't chaos. It was intentional. Because behind the scenes, something else was happening. Something quieter. Something that didn't need headlines to exist. And that's where the name started surfacing. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, repeatedly. Young Miami. At first, it meant nothing. Of course it didn't. Industry circles overlap all the time. Celebrities share spaces. Events, parties after parties, it's normal. But according to the narrative now spreading across multiple platforms, this didn't feel like coincidence anymore. It felt consistent. Too consistent. There were mentions, again, not confirmed, but persistent, of shared locations that weren't public. Private dinners. Exclusive rooms. Spaces where cameras don't go and phones aren't supposed to record. And yet somehow, details still leaked. That's when the first alleged message surfaced. Not a full conversation. Just a fragment. A screenshot so blurry people argued over whether it was even real. But the content. That's what caught attention. Same spot tonight. No names. No timestamps. But enough context, according to those analyzing it, to raise eyebrows. Because the phrasing felt familiar. Too familiar. And then came another. Different account. Different format. Same tone. Keep it low. You know how this looks. That's when the internet stopped scrolling. Because now it wasn't just one random piece, it was a pattern. And patterns are dangerous. Especially when they start aligning with real-world timelines. Fans began digging. Old clips resurfaced, events where Diggs and Young Miami appeared in the same environment. Not interacting directly, not publicly, but present. Same venue. Same night. More than once. Then came the travel overlaps. Flights that landed within hours of each other in the same cities. Hotel sightings, unconfirmed, but repeated enough to keep the conversation alive. And suddenly, what once felt like coincidence started feeling deliberate. Meanwhile, through all of this, Cardi stayed quiet. And that silence. It didn't calm anything down. It made everything louder. Because people started asking the same question over and over again. Does she know? According to insiders, the answer is yes. But not in the way people think. Because the version of events being whispered behind the scenes suggests Cardi didn't just find out overnight. She observed. Watched. Waited. And that changes everything. Because reacting emotionally is one thing. But noticing patterns before anyone else does. That's different. That means by the time the internet started catching on, she may have already been piecing things together. And if that's true, then her reaction later wasn't impulsive. It was built. Layer by layer. Moment by moment. Until something finally pushed it over the edge. That something, according to multiple accounts, happened during a private gathering. Not a public event. Not something with cameras. A controlled environment. Small circle. People who were supposed to be trusted. That's where things reportedly shifted from suspicion to confrontation. Now here's where the story splits, because depending on who you believe, what happened next played out very differently. Some claim it started calm. A simple question. Direct. Unavoidable. Is there something going on I don't know about? Others say the energy was already tense before a single word was spoken. That the room felt heavy. That something had already been sensed before it was confirmed. But every version agrees on one thing. The answer wasn't clear. No direct denial. No full explanation. Just hesitation. And hesitation is louder than any confession. Because when someone has nothing to hide, they don't pause. They don't calculate. They don't choose their words carefully. But according to insiders, that's exactly what happened. And that hesitation, that's when everything cracked. Not publicly. Not yet. Privately. Internally. Because sources say Cardi didn't explode in that moment. She didn't scream. She didn't storm out. She did something far more unsettling. She went quiet. And that kind of quiet is dangerous. Because it means something has shifted. Something has settled into place. A realization. A conclusion. And once that happens, there's no going back to confusion. Only forward into confrontation. Meanwhile, outside that room, the internet was already accelerating. Because just as that private moment was unfolding, another leak hit. This time, not a screenshot. Audio. Short. Distorted. But unmistakable. Two voices. One believed to be Diggs. The other, unclear. The conversation itself. Fragmented. But one line stood out. You're overthinking this. It's not what you think. That should have calmed things down. But it didn't. It made things worse. Because now, people weren't just imagining a connection. They were hearing something. And hearing changes everything. Within minutes, hashtags started forming. Clips were reposted. Breakdowns flooded timelines. Fans split into sides. Some defending. Some accusing. All watching. And right in the middle of that chaos, Cardi finally moved. Not with a statement. Not with a denial. But with something far more powerful. Energy. A shift so visible, so undeniable, that people didn't need words to understand it. Posts started getting sharper. Tone changed. Interactions felt different. Not vague. Not neutral. Personal. And that's when the internet knew. This wasn't just speculation anymore. This was real. Because when someone who's been silent suddenly moves differently, it means something inside has already snapped. But here's where it gets even more intense. Because just when people thought they understood what was happening, a new detail surfaced. One that changed the entire direction of the story. According to multiple insiders, there wasn't just one confrontation. There were two. And the second one didn't happen in private. It happened somewhere no one expected. Somewhere public. Somewhere where walking away wasn't so simple. And what went down in that moment is what pushed this situation from messy to completely out of control. The second confrontation didn't wait for privacy. It didn't wait for calm. It didn't wait for anyone to be ready. It happened in the worst possible place, where eyes were everywhere, phones were already out, and one wrong move could turn into a viral moment in seconds. And that's exactly what happened. Because according to multiple insiders, what had been building quietly between Cardi B, Stefon Diggs, and the growing shadow of young Miami, finally exploded in a setting no one could control. A party. Not just any party. An exclusive, invite-only after event packed with celebrities, industry insiders, and the kind of people who don't just witness drama, they amplify it. Music loud. Lights low. Energy high. But beneath all of that, tension. Because Cardi showed up differently that night. Not loud. Not playful. Focused. Sharp. Watching. And insiders say she wasn't there to celebrate. She was there to confirm. Because word had already reached her that both Diggs and young Miami were expected to be in the same space. Not rumors. Not speculation. Expected. And that changed everything. Because this wasn't about guessing anymore. This was about seeing. Catching something in real time. And according to multiple accounts, it didn't take long. At first, everything looked normal. People talking. Laughing. Moving between rooms. No obvious signs. Nothing that screamed drama. But then came the moment. The one people keep replaying in their heads. A glance. Short. Quick. But loaded. Between Diggs and young Miami. Not staged. Not performative. Instinctive. And for most people, it would have meant nothing. But for Cardi, it was enough. Because insiders say the way her expression changed in that instant told the entire story. Not shock. Not confusion. Recognition. Like she had just seen something she already suspected finally confirm itself without a single word being spoken. That's when she moved. Direct. No hesitation. No warning. She didn't pull him aside quietly. She didn't wait for a private moment. She walked straight toward him. And the energy in that room shifted immediately. Because people felt it. That invisible pull of something about to happen. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. Phones, subtly, started angling. Because when someone like Cardi moves with that kind of purpose, everyone knows something is about to go down. What happened next is where the stories start overlapping, but one detail remains consistent across every version. It got intense fast. No warm-up. No small talk. Just straight to it. You really thought I wouldn't see it? That's the line insiders say cut through the noise. Sharp. Clear. Unmistakable. And Diggs didn't respond right away. Again. That hesitation. That same pause that had already done damage before. And in that moment, it did even more. Because now it wasn't private. Now it was visible. And Cardi was done holding back. Her voice didn't explode immediately. It rose. Controlled at first. But every word carried weight. Every sentence built on the last. Questions turned into statements. Statements turned into accusations. And the room went from loud to watching. Because no one wanted to miss it. No one wanted to be the one who didn't see what everyone else would be talking about for the next 24 hours. And then it happened. A phone lifted too high. A camera angle too obvious. Someone caught it. Not the full exchange. Not every word. But enough. Enough to capture the tension. Enough to record the shift. Enough to go viral within minutes. Because the clip that hit the internet wasn't long. It didn't need to be. All you see is Cardi, face intense, body language sharp, standing in front of Diggs. You hear her voice. Clear. Unfiltered. Don't play me like I'm stupid. That's it. But that was enough. Because tone tells a story words don't have to. And that tone wasn't confusion anymore. It was certainty. Within minutes, the clip spread. Within an hour, it was everywhere. Different angles. Different edits. Slow motion breakdowns. Lip readers trying to decode every second. And just like that, the situation went from contained to uncontrollable. Meanwhile, inside that same space, things were still unfolding. Because according to insiders, Cardi didn't stop at Diggs. She turned toward young Miami. And that's where the tension doubled. Because this wasn't just a relationship confrontation anymore. This was now two women standing in the same space. With the entire room watching. Now, to be clear, there are conflicting reports about what happened next. Some say there was no direct exchange. Just eye contact. Heavy. Loaded. Enough to say everything without saying anything. Others claim words were exchanged. Short. Sharp. Not loud, but cutting. One alleged line that's been circulating. I don't do secrets. You knew that. Unconfirmed. but repeated enough to keep people talking. And whether that line was said or not, the energy between them was undeniable. Because even without raised voices, the tension was visible. And that's what made the moment so powerful. Because sometimes the loudest confrontations don't involve shouting at all. They involve knowing. And in that moment, everyone in that room knew something real was happening. Something that wasn't planned. Something that couldn't be cleaned up later with statements or captions. And then came the shift. The moment Cardi stepped back. Not defeated. Not overwhelmed. Decided. Because insiders say her entire demeanor changed again. The intensity didn't disappear. It sharpened. Focused. Like she had reached a conclusion mid-conversation. And once that happened, there was no reason to stay. No reason to argue. No reason to keep asking questions she already had answers to. So she did something no one expected. She smiled. Brief. Tight. But intentional. And then she said one sentence that, according to multiple witnesses, left the entire situation hanging in the air like a threat. Y'all can have whatever this is. And just like that, she turned and walked out. No hesitation. No looking back. And the second she left, the room exploded. Not physically. Digitally. Because by the time she reached her car, the clip was already trending. The hashtags were already forming. The sides were already being chosen. And Diggs remained inside. Silent. Again. Which only made things worse. Because silence, at this point, was no longer neutral. It was suspicious. And young Miami didn't post. Didn't respond. Didn't engage. Which somehow made everything louder. Because now, 3 people were at the center of a storm. And none of them were fully explaining anything. And when that happens, the internet fills in the blanks. And that's exactly what it did. Theories multiplied. Proof threads started appearing. People claiming to have seen more. Heard more. Known more. And then, just when things couldn't get any more chaotic, another leak dropped. This time, not a clip. Not a message. But something far more dangerous. A voice note. And what was said in that recording is what turned this entire situation from explosive into something no one could ignore anymore. The voice note didn't drop quietly. It detonated. No warning. No build-up. Just a sudden upload from an unverified account that had never posted before, and within seconds, it was everywhere. Shared. Downloaded. Re-uploaded. Slowed down. Enhanced. Analyzed like it was evidence in a case no one could officially prove, but no one could ignore either. Because the moment people pressed play, everything shifted again. The audio wasn't long. But it didn't need to be. One voice, calm, almost too calm. Allegedly Stefon Diggs. The other, lower, less clear, but widely believed to be connected to young Miami. And the words. Careful. Measured. But devastating. It wasn't supposed to get like this. She wasn't even part of the plan like that. That line alone sent the internet into complete freefall. Because if that recording was even remotely real, then this wasn't just overlap. This wasn't just bad timing. This wasn't even just betrayal. This sounded like intention. Planning. Execution. And suddenly, the narrative that once felt exaggerated started sounding dangerously plausible. Because what does part of the plan even mean? People froze on that phrase. Looped it. Debated it. Pulled it apart word by word. Some said it was taken out of context. Others said context didn't matter anymore. Because intention had already been implied. And once intention enters the conversation, everything changes. Meanwhile, Cardi B didn't respond immediately. Again. But this silence wasn't the same as before. This wasn't observation. This wasn't processing. This felt like build-up. Because while the internet was spiraling, something else was happening behind the scenes. People close to Cardi started moving differently. Subtle signs. Unfollow patterns. Archived posts. Moments disappearing quietly. And fans noticed. Of course they did. Because at this point, every movement, no matter how small, was being watched like it meant something bigger. And then came the post. Not emotional. Not chaotic. Controlled. A single video. No filters. No music. Just Cardi. Looking straight into the camera. And the energy. Different. Completely different from anything seen before. No yelling. No visible breakdown. Just clarity. And that's what made it hit harder. Because when she spoke, every word felt deliberate. I gave real, in a situation that wasn't built real. That was the opening. And just like that, millions of people leaned in. Because this wasn't reacting anymore. This was declaring. She didn't say names. She didn't confirm details. But she didn't deny anything either. And that balance. That's what made it explosive. Because it left just enough space for interpretation. While confirming just enough emotion to make everything feel real. She continued. When you start noticing patterns, you don't unsee them. That line. Instantly clipped. Reposted. Turned into captions, tweets, headlines. Because it connected directly to everything people had been saying from the beginning. Patterns. Timing. Overlap. And now. Validation. But the most chilling moment came at the end. Because her tone dropped. Softer. But sharper. And when I asked questions, I didn't get answers. I got silence. There it was. The silence. The same silence that had followed Diggs through every stage of this situation. And suddenly, that silence wasn't neutral anymore. It was evidence. At least in the eyes of the public. Within minutes, the internet exploded again. Not just with reactions, but with sides. Team Cardi. Team wait for facts. Team this was obvious. Arguments flooded every platform. Breakdowns turned into debates. Debates turned into digital wars. Because now, this wasn't just a story. It was a battleground. And then, just when it seemed like things might stabilize, Stefon Diggs finally moved. Again. A post. No video this time. Just text. Black background. White font. Minimal. I never played anyone. People just don't understand everything. That was it. No elaboration. No apology. No acknowledgement of the voice note. And somehow, that made everything worse. Because instead of calming the situation, it split it even further. Some saw it as denial. Others saw it as deflection. And many saw it as confirmation without admitting anything directly. And then came the final twist. Because just hours after his post, another clip surfaced. Short. Grainy. but undeniable. It showed a private lounge. Low lighting. Music in the background. And three figures. One clearly Cardi. One believed to be Diggs. And a third, widely speculated to be young Miami. All in the same space. At the same time. Before everything exploded. The clip didn't show conflict. No argument. No confrontation. Just presence. Shared space. And that's what made it so powerful. Because it proved one thing beyond doubt. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't separate timelines. This was overlap. Real. Physical. Undeniable. And once that visual hit the internet, there was no going back. Because now, people weren't just imagining connections. They were seeing them. And that's when the narrative locked in. Not confirmed. Not officially stated. But believed. And in today's world, belief spreads faster than truth. Meanwhile, Cardi didn't post again. Not immediately. Because she didn't need to. The message had already landed. The shift had already happened. And the conclusion was already forming in people's minds. But just when it felt like the story had reached its peak, one final detail surfaced. Not a leak. Not a clip. A timestamp. Attached to a scheduled post. From Cardi's account. No preview. No caption. Just a time. Tomorrow. And that's what froze everything again. Because after everything that's already come out, after the messages, the confrontations, the voice note, the video, if she's still not done, then whatever comes next might not just expose what happened. It might expose why it happened. And who else knew about it. And if that happens, this doesn't stay drama. This becomes something else entirely. Something bigger. Something no one involved can escape. And if you think what you just heard was the full story, you're already behind. Because this situation, it's still unfolding. Right now. In real time. And the next piece, the one Cardi hinted at, that's the one everyone is waiting for. The one that could flip everything you think you know about Cardi B, Stefon Diggs, and young Miami. We are not talking about small updates. We are talking about receipts. Names. Context that could completely rewrite this entire narrative. So if you're even slightly invested in this, if you felt that tension, if you caught those clues, if you're trying to figure out what's real, and what's being hidden, you cannot afford to miss what comes next. Hit like right now if you think there's more behind this than what's being shown. Drop a comment and tell me, was this coincidence, or was it calculated from the start? And most important, subscribe. Because when that next drop hits, and it will hit, you don't want to be the one catching up late, trying to piece together a story that's already moved on without you. Stay locked in. Because this isn't just drama anymore. This is about to turn into something nobody can ignore.